A few days ago, Doug asked me this question on YouTube comments where he pointed out that why do I use the add columns function along with the summarize function to create additional columns? Although the summarize function inherently has the capability to create additional columns, but why do I still use the add columns feature as a wrapper? I learned about this weird behavior of the summarize function from an article from Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari, and it has got over 150 comments. I thought people already know about it, but it's time for me to make a video on this weird behavior of the summarize function. Most importantly, in this video, I'm going to teach you investigative DAX. That's the DAX that you write in order to uncover the mysteries of DAX. Alright, too much of talking. Let's just peel some weird DAX one layer at a time. You're going to enjoy this a lot. Stick around. Alright, let's just start working with a simple table, and I will also deep dive in the workings of the summarize function, but let's just take a look at the data. So I've got this 3-column simple data. We have the class, we have the product, and we have the stock. Tiny little table, just one table, no other table. Now, since we are working with the summarize function, it's important for you to understand that once you write the summarize function, the result of the summarize function is not a scalar or a single value. It is actually a table. Now, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lot of tables or queries. That means whatever work that I do, you can end up doing that in the DAX query view right here. I am, however, going to use DAX Studio because that's just a neater environment for me to work in. Nevertheless, let's just go over to the external tools and open up DAX Studio. Whatever I do, you can end up doing it in the query view as well. Once I'm there in DAX Studio, let's just write the most fundamental evaluate statement to just take a look at the table once again that I'm trying to work with. So evaluate, I'm going to say, hey, why don't you take my table, click on run, and that is the table that I just showed to you in Power BI. So I'm not really pulling any funny business here. Now, once we have the table, let's just say this particular table, I would like to summarize it by the class. That means I want to remove the duplicates from here, and I just want to have 2 items, which is the first item is A and the second item is B. So these 2 items are summarized. That's all that I would want to have. So what I can do is I can use the simple summarize function, and I can say, hey, I would like to start using summarize. The first part of summarize, give me a table to work with. And here is a table that you can work with. And in the table, the column on which I would like to run my summarization is nothing but the class column. I close the bracket, I click on run, and you can see that the class has been summarized and we get 2 items, which are the unique items of the class A and B. Now, this is where the fun begins. In the summarize function, against A and against B, I can also do a bunch of calculations. For example, I can say in the summarize function, hey, summarize function, I am done summarizing my columns, but now I want to create a calculated column in the table. So I can say that I want to create a column called stock, or let's say total stock, and the total stock is going to be calculated with a sum function, and I would like to sum which column? The my table column, and in my table I would like to sum the stock column, and I can do that. I can close the bracket, and if I run this particular query, a column is going to be created, which is where I'm going to get 14 and 10. Let's just hop over to Excel and validate, are these numbers correct or not? So if I happen to just go ahead and take a look at A total, so I can apply a filter. 5 plus 5 plus 4 gives me 14, and that's what I get right here. And I can remove the filter and then go to B and apply a filter once again, and 5, 3, 1 and 1 actually gives me 10, and that is the number right here. So the numbers are absolutely correct. Now, one interesting thing that you're going to note in the summarize function is that when I'm creating the summarize function and I am writing any particular calculation, the calculation doesn't need context transition. That means I don't have to use the calculate function around it for that calculation to work. Now, if you don't know what context transition is, I'm going to highly recommend that you take a look at a couple of videos that I have done on context transition. But for now, context transition is a native part of the summarize function. Now that I've uncovered the ability of the summarize function to create columns, let me just start pulling some funny business inside and try to not make it work somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more column. So I can just put in a comma right here, and I can say, hey, I want to create an overall stock column, and the overall stock column is going to be calculated something like this. So I'm going to say, hey, I am trying to calculate the sum again. So I'm going to say, hey, sum of, I'm just going to say sum, and I'm going to say, hey, sum the my table once again, and in my table, please sum the stock column. And I use the calculate function purely to add a filter. So I'm going to say, hey, why don't you remove the filter from class A and class B? I don't really want these filters to happen because I want to take a total of both of these values and write it right here and write it right here. That is going to be 24 and 24. So obviously I'm going to go ahead and write remove filters function, and I will remove the filters of the class. So I'm just going to go right here and I'm going to say, hey, remove the filters from my table. And which column do I want to remove the filters from? Is the class column, which is this column that is visible right here. Now I'm going to close the bracket. I think I forgot to put the comma in here. I can put the comma and I can click on run, and it gives me some answer which is definitely not right. It gives me 15 and 19, which is not right. I was expecting to see 24 here and 24 here. So these numbers are definitely not right. At this stage, you have two options. Option number one is going to be that you start looking at your DAX, stare it, give it dirty looks, and nothing is going to happen. It's going to stare back at you, and the result is going to just be the result that you have gotten. The other option is that, hey, you know that the add columns technique works. It has worked in the past. I have used it. Marco uses it. Alberto uses the same technique. So why don't we just kind of remove the fluff and use this same technique with the add columns approach? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and instead of creating this particular column within the summarize function, I'm going to create this particular column with the add columns approach. Let's just see if that works or not. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that I'm trying to add an add columns wrapper. Here is my table, and in this particular table, I am trying to add a new column. So I'm going to say add col, and this is overall stock again. So overall stock, and the formula to be able to do this particular calculation is the exact formula that I wrote inside of the summarize. So I'm just going to maybe stick that formula right here, close the bracket. This works well. I can just format the DAX a little bit, and I'm going to click on run, and you can see that it actually gives me the right answer. It is 24. It is 24. You're happy. Your formula works well, and you go home. But if you are a curious type, here is what is going to happen. This problem that did not get solved using the summarize approach is probably going to bog you down maybe in the night, maybe the next week, and the week after that. You know that in your gut something did not digest well, and you would want to solve this somehow. At this stage, what we are going to do is we're going to write some investigative DAX to be able to uncover that what the heck is going on here and why this does not give you the right result as compared to the add columns approach. I hope you like the name. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd like to give a big shout out about my courses on Power BI, especially DAX, modeling, and the M language. I teach them in a very structured way. I try to give you the logic of understanding the problem, deconstructing the problem, and then framing the solution of the problem. That logic helps you to understand the problem at hand that we are doing in the course. Not only that, but you can then take the logic and apply it to your own cases as well, which is going to tremendously boost your confidence of solving your own data problems. Hundreds of students have joined my courses and they have benefited a lot. In case you're interested, the link is down in the description. Go back to the video. And this approach from here on in the video is also going to generally teach you that in case you are stuck, how do you uncover problems and how do you go dig deeper and then find out that what problems do actually happen inside of your DAX calculation engine. Let's start. So the one thing that I know so far is that the add columns, this particular column and this column that we have created are working, no problem at all. This works. So I'm just going to put this column aside and delete that from my query so far. So I'm going to get rid of all of this, delete, and I'm also going to get rid of the add columns approach because I know that works just all right. Now let's just go ahead and figure out that I want to figure out that why do I actually get 15 and why do I actually get 19 here as an answer? I really want to figure it out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create, let's say, another column. Let's just go run this query for a real quick. So I'm going to click on run. I only get the two columns that I would want. And let's just create one more column right here. I'm going to call this column as investigation. And in the investigation column, I'm going to go ahead and copy the very same formula, Control C on that and Control V on that right here. And this is the very same formula. The only difference in this formula that I would want to make is that I don't really want to do the sum anymore. I at least want to take a look at the underlying table that gets created to be able to get you the sum. So what I want to do is instead of doing the sum, I just want to know how many rows are being considered for me to be able to get this number 15. So instead of sum, I'm going to use the function called COUNTROWS function. So count rows, and the COUNTROWS function actually asks you for a table, not a column. So I'm going to feed the my table right here. I'm going to close the bracket and this is good to go. So now if I just go ahead and run this particular calculation, this is my investigation, and my investigation proved that at the moment I have 5 rows, some 5 rows, random rows, I don't know which rows, that lead up to this answer, which is 15. If I actually compare that with my Excel, if I actually go ahead and take a look at all the rows of the data, so if I remove the filter, I do not want to actually get 5 rows of the data because I have removed the filter from the class. This particular filter is gone. We don't really have it. So what I'm taking a look at is the entire data set, which is all the rows of the data, which is definitely not 5 but 7. So here also I should technically get 7 rows of data. In here also I should get 7 rows of data. But let's just assume that something went wrong. Even if I apply the filter for B, I do not get 5 rows, I actually get 4 rows of data. If I actually remove it, I apply the filter on A, I do not get 4 rows of data, I get 3 rows of data. There's something more deeper going on. Let's just investigate further. So this does not quite lead me to the answer. Let's investigate further. My next approach is going to be, there is some table that is being created using this particular weird filter, but I want to go inside of this table and I want to take a look at the rows and the columns and the values of the table. How do I actually do that? Let's just create a variable and let's just call this as my weird table. Now this particular weird table at the moment is not a table. It's actually a single calculation. That means you don't get a table here, you get one particular answer. In order for me to convert it into a table, I have to get rid of the calculate function and instead use the calculate table function, because the calculate table function can return a table, not the calculate function. So I'm going to say, hey, calculate table function. I'm trying to evaluate a table, not the count rows of the table, but just a table under the filter, which is this particular filter. And in order for me to make sure that my result is still right and I still get the 5 rows of data, which I got it initially, I'm going to return this particular variable and say that, hey, why don't you count the number of rows there are? So return once again, and I will say, hey, why don't you count the number of rows in a table which is called the weird table. I'm going to close the bracket and I'm going to run this particular query. I still get 5 and I still get 4. That means I have kept that particular table intact, presumably at least with the answers that I get 5 and 4. Now at this stage, I want to go inside of the table and I want to take a look at what is inside of this weird table. So I'm going to go ahead and launch another investigation. So I'm going to call this as var. I want to look inside. So look inside, that's my variable, and I want to look inside of this weird table. So I'm going to say that, hey, I would like to use a function called the CONCATENATEX function, and the CONCATENATEX function asks you, hey, what's your table? So my table is nothing but my weird table. I can copy that and I can paste that right here. And in this particular table, I want to go take a look at the class. That means what classes are being concatenated or evaluated. So I can just maybe write the class right here. I can close the bracket. Maybe I can also give a delimiter, which is nothing but a comma. I can close the bracket. This seems it should work well. If I just go ahead and just return the look inside variable instead, and I'm just going to also format the DAX real quick, and this looks good. This should not be a comma here, and I format it once again. This looks good, and I run this particular query. Now I can see that the 5 rows that I was getting, one of the columns, which is the class column, shows me this in my investigation. If you actually take a look at Excel, in the case of A, even if the filters were applied and the filters were not removed, so although I'm trying to remove the filters from this particular column, so even if the filters were applied for some weird reason, I should only see A's here, A, and A, but I should not see B here. But technically, this is not even the right answer. The right answer is going to be all of A's and all of B. That means I should see all of them right here. That is what I should see right here because I have removed the filters. But it doesn't quite work right. What I want to do is I want to investigate further and I want to see, hey, in order for me to get this 15, what numbers are being evaluated? That means what numbers are actually considered by this table that is totaling up to a 15. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, you are concatenating class. Okay, thank you so much. I would want you to concatenate the stock column as well. So I'm going to say stock, close the bracket. Hopefully that returns me the right answer. I click on run and I also get the stock column. Let's just also space this out a bit. Click on run and this is what we get. So it actually shows me B1, 1, 3, 5, and 5. Two 5s actually make it a 10, and then 3 plus 1 plus 1 actually make it a 15. So this is how I am actually getting the number. And if I just go ahead and add to my investigation the product as well, it's going to look something like this. So I have already added the class, the stock, and I would also like to add maybe the product. So product, close the bracket, and I again want to concatenate that with a little dash sign, and this is good to go. So now if I just go ahead and perhaps run my query, you're going to see that what we get is this particular query right here. And what I get right here are all of the values which are here. Let's go ahead and match these values. That what values are these that are even being considered when the filter is applied. So if you take a look at B color 1, the first value is right here, B color 1, and then B color 1 once again, that's the second value right here, and then B color 3, that's the third value right here, and then we have A cup 5, that is right here, and we have B cup 5, which is right here. So these are the values which are being considered in that table. At this stage, what we have been able to do is at least been able to uncover that what values constitute and why are we getting a number 15. Now at this stage, once you're visually taking a look at the table, let me also color the values and let me help you understand that what is happening and why is it happening and how the summarize function is actually acting weird. Now you'll be able to understand very, very clearly. Now imagine for a second, I went ahead and I applied, let's say, a filter to the B, which is nothing but this particular class right here. I applied a filter. Now, when you're taking a look at the summarize function, although the summarize function just gave you the B and the A, but internally, it was actually working with this table that it had it in its brain, which is not just the class column. It had the class column, it had the product column, and it also had the stock column. And I can prove that to you because we actually concatenated the class, the product, and the stock, and we got these numbers right here. So it inherently had those columns, but you were just not able to take a look at it when you summarize the table using the class only as in your filter. That means these columns were already there. Now comes the question. Once you say that, hey, I want to do a my table calculation, and I want to remove the filter of the class, that means I want to remove the filter from here, you are literally removing the filter from only the class, not the color and not the stock. That's how it happens. That means that it's going to remove the filter from this particular column, but the two products, which is the cup product and the color product, and the three stock units, which is 5, 3, and 1, are going to be retained as a filter. That means I'm going to go ahead and retain those filters. That means I'm just going to go ahead and select color and cup. There's no filter applied. Let me just remove the filter and put those filters quickly back. So I'm just going to remove the filters and I'm going to go ahead and apply a filter to the values which were there. So there was a color and a cup right here in this particular column. And there was a 1, 3, and 5 right here. Click on OK. Now these are the values which actually made the 5 values which are right here. That actually resulted in the number 15, and that is why the result was actually going wrong. Reason why? Because although you took a look at only B and A, but inherently it captured the entire table with the additional columns that were already there along with the summarize, just that you were not able to see that. Let's just go quickly validate the results for A as well. So if I just go ahead and take a look at A, I'm getting the number 19 and I have all of these values right here. So if I just go ahead and quickly remove the color and apply the filter, so let's just go say that, hey, I want to filter for the value A, and I don't get 3 values here, but I get 4 values here because in these 2 columns there are 2 more filters. There's a cup, pencil, and a cup filter, and there is a 4 and a 5 filter. So if I just remove right here and I apply the filter, which is a cup, pencil, and a color filter, all good, and I just go ahead and apply a 4 and a 5 filter, remove the 1 and 3, click on OK, I'm going to get these 4 values, and these are the 4 values which are right here. So the filter from this column has been removed thanks to the remove filters function, but these 2 filters, they are actually there in your summarize table and they weren't removed. If you've made thus far in the video, let me share with you something more interesting about the summarize function, which is going to blow your minds out. Now let's just go back to Power BI. In Power BI, what I did was I created this dimension table, which is where we had the class, and we know that we just have 2 classes, A and B, and A and B are also marked against a certain country. country. In case you want to take a look at this particular table, I can show that to you. You can see that we have now the class key, which is A and B, the only two classes of products that we have. Against that, we have the countries as well, which is India and China. Now, because these are unique and there are no blanks, I can go ahead and create that one-to-many relationship between the two tables that is linked. I click on save and the relationship is running. Now, I made no change to the query. At this stage, I just built that one-to-many relationship and I did not make any changes to my query. Now, with that one-to-many relationship table linked, let me just go ahead and run the exact same query, which is where at the moment the answer is 15 and 19, and you've also undercovered why is that so. Let me just go ahead and run it, and you're going to see that because we have been able to make that one-to-many relationship, the answers actually change. It's 14 and it's 10. It's not really right. Why is that? Now, this weird behavior happens because the summarize function is now able to take a look at all of these columns alongside this particular table. So sure enough, you had the class A and you had the class B. Alongside, you also had the other hidden columns that you did not see, and the B had a couple of hidden columns. So it had obviously the class, it has the product, it had the stock, but this time it has one more additional column, which is nothing but the country coming in, because that is nothing but an expanded table. It can take a look at all of these columns from this particular table as well. How do I know that? I can actually write the VLOOKUP function right here. So I'm actually concatenating the class, the product, and the stock. Let's also go concatenate the country. So I'm going to go ahead and say something like, hey, I want to write a VLOOKUP. So related, that's the VLOOKUP in Power BI. And I want to say, hey, I want to go ahead and do a VLOOKUP in the dimension table, which is the class dim table, and I want to pull the country and I want to close the bracket. And if I now run it, you're going to see that we not only get the A cup 4, but we also get the country right here. If you were to visually think about it, the table has expanded now to get 4 columns right here. So let's just go ahead and apply the filters once again. So if I apply the filter on B, I get 4 rows of the data, but you can see that I actually remove the filters from B column, but I actually retain the filters of all the color and the cup, the 1, 3, and the 5, and for China. So if I just go ahead and retain those filters, I can apply the filter for, let's say, the color and the cup. Click on OK. I can apply the filter on the stock, which is a 1, 3, and 5. Click on OK. And I can apply the filter on China, which is right here. So this filter has removed for sure, but you can see that now we actually get 4 rows of data, and that's exactly what you see. And if you total these numbers up, 1, 1, 3, and 5, you're actually going to get the number 10 and not the previous number. Let's just summarize the summarize function. Okay, that was a nice pun, but let's just summarize that. The very first learning is when you're creating the summarized table. So I summarized my table and I summarized it by the class, and we actually saw the class being summarized, which is nothing but remove the duplicates, and we have the unique classes right here. Although you do see the unique class right here, but underneath the B that you see, there is a full table like this, which does not just has the B column, but also has the product, the stock, the country, and all the possible columns from all the possible dimension tables attached to this particular value right here. Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari call this approach as clustering. You can call it whatever, but this is how the summarize function executes the table. Key learning number 2, when you're writing the summarize function, not only you are going to get the table which is in question, the fact table and its column, but you're also going to get all the possible dimension table. At the moment we just had one dimension table, but hey, you could have a calendar table, and you can have a territory table, and you can have a customers table. The columns from all of those tables are inherently going to be a part of the class here for every single row. That means the table that is formed inherently in the brain of the summarize function is not only going to have the class as you see it as the unique value, but also going to have the product and the stock and the country and all the possible columns from all of these tables right here. Key learning number 3, when you use the summarize function and you summarize the my table and the class column, and when you wrap that around in the add columns function, the add columns function isn't able to take a look at all the expanded table. So all of this is not visible to the add columns function. What the add columns is able to take a look at is only the A and the B. It is going to work with just these values, remove the filters or do whatever and give you the right answer. That is why a lot of times the add columns and the summarize approach tends to give you the right answers over just summarizing the columns using the summarize function. In case you've liked this video, you're absolutely going to love my next video on learning about the most important DAX functions. I'll see you there.